There's a moment when your world shifts, not with noise, but with silence. You don't see it coming. One minute you think you know the person sleeping next to you, and the next, something you find makes you realize you never really did. That realization didn't hit me all at once. It crept in, soft and cold, like water seeping through the cracks of everything I thought was solid. I remember sitting there in our apartment, the rain against the window, wondering how long I'd been living inside a story someone else was writing for me. Let's say his name was Andrew, my fiancé, the man everyone described as the safe bet, the one who made promises in calm tones and kept his chaos neatly folded behind charm. He knew how to look at you just long enough to make you feel seen, and then vanish behind a smile that gave nothing away. For 3 years, we built a future that looked perfect on the outside. The kind of relationship people post about: matching mugs, weekend trips, photos that made us look like the calm in each other's storms. And maybe I believed it too, until she appeared. The old friend, that's what he called her, with that casual, innocent tone that always felt rehearsed. "You'd like her," he said. "She's funny, smart, one of those people who always show up when you least expect it." And she did, over and over. First at a mutual friend's dinner, then at a charity event he'd invited me to. Then again, by pure coincidence, of course, at the same cafe I went to every Thursday morning before work. Each time, the same expression of polite surprise, the same gentle laugh, like fate, had a twisted sense of humor. "Oh, wow, you're here too?" she'd say, brushing her hair behind her ear. And maybe that line would have felt harmless if her eyes hadn't flicked to Andrew every single time before landing on me. When I asked about her, he laughed it off. "She's harmless," he said, leaning down to kiss me as if affection could cancel suspicion. "Don't be paranoid." But unease doesn't disappear when you tell it to. It grows quietly in the corners, in late-night texts answered in another room, in the way his phone stayed face down on the table, in the pauses that stretched too long before he said her name. The more I tried to reason with myself, the stranger everything began to feel. Her presence was like static, invisible, constant, always there when I least wanted to notice it. And the worst part was that Andrew acted like the coincidence was mine to explain. Still, I did what good fiancés do, smiled, stayed patient, told myself love meant trust even when trust started tasting like denial. Until one rainy Friday night, he was away for another conference, and I couldn't sleep. I went into his office to tidy up, to quiet my mind, maybe to feel close to him in a space that always smelled like his cologne and ambition. That's when I found it. A folded piece of paper tucked between receipts. A hotel bill. At first, it didn't mean anything. Just another business trip, I told myself. Until my eyes fell on the signature at the bottom, and right above his name, written in elegant, unmistakable cursive, was hers. The same old friend. The silence in that room was deafening. I remember staring at the rain sliding down the glass, the reflection of my own face in the window, pale, still, unblinking. That was the moment my world shifted, not with noise, but with silence, and I knew that nothing about my life, my relationship, or the man I thought I was going to marry would ever look the same again. I didn't sleep that night. The city outside kept breathing. Cars sliding through wet streets, thunder rumbling somewhere far away. But the apartment felt hollow, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I sat at his desk for hours, the paper in my hand softening under my fingers, rereading the same lines until the words blurred. Hotel name. Check-in date. 2 guests. Her name? It didn't matter how long I stared at it. It wouldn't rearrange into something innocent. By 3 a.m, I'd memorized every detail. My mind was a loop of excuses I didn't believe. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone else booked it. Maybe there was a reason. But the truth doesn't care how creative your hope is. It just waits, patient, merciless, until you run out of lies to feed it. I tried to imagine calling him. I pictured his voice, calm, tired, slightly annoyed that I was overthinking. I could already hear his script. "You're being dramatic, babe. You're reading too much into it." That was the part that broke me, not the betrayal itself, but knowing exactly how he'd deny it. I put the paper back in the drawer, closed it slowly, as if hiding it would delay what came next, but the silence didn't follow my command. It grew heavier, thicker, pressing against my chest until breathing felt like effort. The next morning I made coffee I didn't drink. The smell alone turned my stomach. His mug sat beside mine on the counter, the one that said "Best Fiancé Ever," a joke gift I'd bought months ago, back when I still believed titles meant something. I turned it face down in the sink and left it there. By habit, I checked my phone. His text was already waiting. "Morning, babe. Miss you. Long day ahead." Just like that. Simple, sweet, rehearsed. The kind of message written by a man who had mastered the rhythm of deception. I typed out half a reply. "Hope your conference is going well," then deleted it before sending. My fingers hovered over the screen, then fell still. For the first time, I didn't want to play my part in his story anymore. Later, when I stepped outside, the world looked sharper, the air colder, sounds louder. I noticed things I'd ignored for months. The faint perfume that sometimes lingered on his jacket, the lipstick stain on a receipt he'd crumpled, the way he always deflected when I asked about her. They'd been there all along, I just hadn't been ready to connect the dots. By the time he came home 2 days later, I'd already built my mask. Calm, composed, waiting. He walked through the door, carrying flowers, the picture of affection, kissed me like he hadn't been living a double life. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. How easily lies can borrow the language of love. He asked about my weekend. I said it was quiet. He smiled, relieved, thinking the silence meant safety. He didn't notice the slight tremor in my hands as I poured his coffee, or the way my eyes followed every movement he made. I wasn't ready to confront him yet, not because I doubted what I knew, but because I wanted to see how far he'd go to keep pretending. And as I watched him standing there smiling that familiar smile, it hit me. The real betrayal wasn't in the hotel bill. It was in how ordinary he looked while everything inside me was coming undone. The man I loved was still right there in front of me, only now I knew I was looking at a stranger. People like to say you can't see a lie when you're in love. I don't think that's true. You see it. You just build an entire world around it so it doesn't ruin the story you're desperate to believe. When I met Andrew, it was winter, one of those brittle blue-gray days where breath fog's in the air and everyone walks a little faster to feel like they're going somewhere. He'd stopped me on the corner after a networking event, pretending he needed directions, even though the venue was right behind him. I should have known then. He had that effortless confidence that never asked, only assumed the answer would be yes. He made falling in love feel easy, almost scripted. Late-night phone calls that bled into sunrise, long drives with music loud enough to make conversation optional. He remembered tiny things about me, how I hated mornings, how I always double-checked locks, how I flinched when people raised their voices. He noticed everything. Or maybe he just studied people well enough to imitate sincerity. Our relationship moved fast. Dinners turned into weekends away, weekends into shared keys. His apartment smelled like cedar and ambition, tidy, minimal, always ready for visitors. He said he liked order. I thought that meant stability. Now I know it was control. His friends adored him. Everyone did. He had that magnetic kind of charm that convinced you to trust him, even when your instincts whispered otherwise. "He's a good one," they'd tell me. "You can tell." And I'd nod, smiling, wanting so badly for that to be true. When he proposed, it wasn't grand. It was a quiet night in our living room, candles half burned, a glass of wine still in my hand. He said, "You make everything calmer," and slipped the ring on my finger before I could even answer. I remember my hands shaking, not from surprise, but because part of me already felt the weight of it, like he wasn't asking me to marry him so much as to manage him forever. Still, I said yes, because love is supposed to be work, right? And I was good at working for things. The cracks started small, missed calls, unexplained absences. A shift in his tone when he said my name, still gentle, but with less attention behind it. like he was speaking through habit instead of affection. He started traveling more, always for projects, always urgent. I'd offer to go with him, and he'd laugh. "It's boring, babe. You'd hate it." Then came the photos. He showed me one from a company retreat, a group shot by the pool, his arm around a colleague's shoulder. At the edge of the frame stood her, the old friend. Smiling, casual, too close to be coincidence. I asked who she was, and he said it like it was nothing. "You'd like her. We go way back." After that, she began appearing in stories he told, little mentions, small overlaps. "Oh, she was at the event too. She helped with the pitch." She's good with clients. Her name slipped into conversation like background music. Always there, easy to ignore if you didn't listen too closely. But I listened. And once you start listening for a lie, every silence starts sounding suspicious. His mother called her sweet. His coworkers called her brilliant. I called her lucky to have a version of Andrew that was still performing sincerity. There was one night I remember vividly. We were sitting on the couch, watching something mindless, his head resting on my shoulder. His phone buzzed just once, and he reached for it so quickly it startled me. "Work," he said. But he didn't open the message. He just stared at the screen for a second too long before setting it face down again. The faintest trace of a smile crossed his lips. Not guilt, not joy, something in between. I wanted to ask. Instead, I turned up the volume on the TV and pretended not to notice my own heartbeat in my throat. That was how I loved him, by editing myself out of my own suspicions. By the time wedding plans began, I'd stopped telling friends when something felt wrong. They'd only say, "It's stress. Everyone gets cold feet." And maybe they were right, because I couldn't feel the ground anymore. I was living in a perfect photograph, the kind people like on social media, while behind it, the real picture was blurring. Then one afternoon, when he was at a client dinner, I saw her again. She was leaving the same restaurant he'd told me he'd never been to. Her expression shifted when she saw me. Just for a second, the smile faltered, then returned, practiced, and polite. That was the day I realized this wasn't imagination. It was choreography. And I was the only one who didn't know the steps. Engagement changed everything, and nothing at all. The ring glittered, the photos looked beautiful, but the space between us only grew colder. Everyone saw the sparkle. No one felt the silence. Andrew wanted the big wedding. "It's important for my parents," he said, which really meant for him. Guest lists, venues, tastings. I did it all while he handled business trips. He called them that, but they felt more like disappearances. He'd return with stories that didn't match the tan lines on his wrist or the perfume that clung to his shirts. Still, I tried. God, I tried. I planned the perfect engagement party. Flowers, lights, music soft enough to make people whisper. He showed up 40 minutes late, said traffic. His tie was crooked, his eyes glossy with fatigue. Or maybe guilt. When I asked where he'd been, he kissed my forehead instead of answering. That kiss was his favorite way to end conversations. Later that night, while he laughed with friends, I caught her name. Someone mentioned it in passing, how she'd helped organize an event for his firm. "Andrew and she make such a great team," his coworker said. Everyone smiled. I did too, because my face knew its cue. Inside, something small and sharp turned over. After that night, she started living between us like a third shadow. I'd catch fragments of her everywhere, her perfume in his car, her voice on speaker during conference calls, her comments under his posts, always friendly, always public, always designed to look innocent. When I confronted him, gently, carefully, the way you do when you're still pretending he might tell the truth, he laughed. "You're jealous," he said, almost fondly. "You need to relax. She's been through a rough time. I'm just helping her out." Helping her out. The phrase stuck to me like smoke. He started working later. Deadlines, strategy meetings, drinks with clients. My evenings turned into waiting, pretending to read, pretending to sleep, pretending not to imagine the glow of her phone lighting up his hand. Friends noticed. "You okay?" they'd ask. I'd smile. "Just wedding stress." That excuse covered everything from doubt to heartbreak. One night I decided to surprise him at his office. I'd baked cookies, of all things. The elevator smelled of disinfectant and exhaustion. His office lights were off, except one lamp by his desk. I saw 2 mugs, 2 jackets on the chair, her scarf draped neatly over the backrest. My pulse stuttered. I left the cookies on the reception desk and went home. The next morning, he thanked me for them, claiming a janitor must have found them. He didn't even blink. That was when my love began turning into observation. I started watching, not trusting. He thought I'd softened, when really I was taking notes. The more I looked, the clearer the pattern became. Her accidental appearances, the overlapping trips, the phone that never left his hand. Every piece of their story was written inside mine. I just hadn't learned to read it yet. And then, as if fate wanted to end the suspense, I saw them together. It was a rainy Sunday, weeks before that hotel bill. I was driving home from errands when I spotted his car parked outside a small restaurant across town. I almost kept going. Almost. Instead, I slowed, just enough to see through the window. There they were, Andrew leaning in, laughing, his hand brushing hers on the table. No hesitation, no guilt, just ease, the kind that comes from practice. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. Sometimes, seeing is enough to end something, even if you don't say it yet. I drove home in silence, my heart beat a steady drum against the steering wheel. That night, he came home smelling like rain and wine. "Long meeting," he said. I nodded. "Looks like it." He kissed me and I let him. I wanted to know how long he'd keep lying when the truth was already sitting between us like an uninvited guest. The next few weeks blurred together. I planned wedding details with the precision of someone documenting evidence. Every decision, venue, photographer, song list, felt detached, mechanical. My mind was elsewhere, circling around that scarf, that dinner, that laugh. And then came the night when I cleaned his office and found the hotel bill. It didn't surprise me. It confirmed everything. It wasn't discovery. It was proof. The final piece of a puzzle I'd been pretending didn't exist. The story I'd built around love had finally collapsed under the weight of the truth I'd been too afraid to see. Finding the hotel bill didn't make me explode. It hollowed me out. Anger was too easy for what I felt. It was something colder, like standing waist deep in water you thought was shallow and realizing there's no bottom. I didn't confront him that night. People think betrayal sparks fury, but sometimes it just leaves you calculating. I wanted to see the performance continue, to know how well he'd sell me the lie when I already knew the script. When Andrew came home from his conference, I was sitting on the couch pretending to read. He kissed my hair and dropped his suitcase by the door, humming, casual, perfectly rehearsed. "You should have come," he said. The view from the hotel was insane. The view, the hotel. My fingers tightened on the book until the page bent. "Next time," I murmured. My voice didn't shake. It almost frightened me how steady I sounded. Over the next few days, I became an expert in pretending. I smiled through dinners, through phone calls with his mother, through every little moment that used to mean safety. I studied him the way you study a stranger you don't trust. Carefully, silently, waiting for the tell. He didn't disappoint. Thursday night, another client meeting. He left in his favorite gray suit, the one I'd once ironed before an anniversary dinner. The moment the door closed, I followed the echo of his lie. My heart pounded so loud I could feel it in my teeth, but my body moved on autopilot. Coat, keys, phone. He hadn't gone to the restaurant he mentioned. I found his car parked outside a downtown hotel, the same logo as on the bill. The rain blurred everything. Light smeared across my windshield like melting glass, but I saw him clearly through the lobby window. He was talking to someone, smiling in that easy, disarming way that had once been mine. Then she turned. Her, the old friend. They walked toward the elevators together, his hand resting lightly on her back. Not a secret touch, an entitled one. The kind you give when you've convinced yourself no one will ever see. I sat in the car until my breathing stopped sounding human. Then I started the engine and drove home without remembering the turns. The city passed in streaks of red and white, and all I could think was, he's not even trying to hide it anymore. At home, the apartment smelled like him. Cologne and coffee and betrayal dressed up as routine. I poured a glass of wine, stared at our engagement photo on the wall. We looked perfect, like every couple who thought forever was guaranteed. The irony almost made me laugh. He came home past midnight, shirt untucked, tie loosened. Long night, he sighed. I asked how the meeting went, just to hear the lie. He smiled. Exhausting. I'm starving. Then he kissed me, soft, familiar, unearned. I tasted perfume that wasn't mine. The next morning, I woke before him. He looked peaceful in sleep, completely unaware that the version of me beside him was gone. I wasn't the fiancé waiting for explanations anymore. I was a witness collecting evidence. So I started documenting everything: receipts, timestamps, screenshots of messages he didn't know I could see. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed truth and something tangible. Love had blurred the lines too much. I needed paper and ink to remind me I wasn't insane. He still called her old friend. He still looked me in the eye when he said it. But now, every smile of his landed like static. A week later, she showed up again, this time at our favorite cafe. I swear she did it on purpose. She spotted me before I saw her, raised a hand in that friendly wave that makes you feel cornered in public. I forced a smile, said hello, even offered to buy her coffee. If she noticed my shaking hands, she didn't show it. She chatted easily, pretending nothing was strange. Andrew told me you're almost done with wedding prep, she said, her tone light, harmless, but that single sentence told me everything. Andrew told me. He was talking about me with her, discussing our wedding like I was a character in a story they shared. By the time she left, I'd decided what had to happen. I wasn't going to scream or beg or cry in front of either of them. I was going to end this quietly, precisely, the way he'd begun it, with calculation disguised as calm. That night, I slipped the hotel bill into my purse, the proof, the artifact of everything false between us. If he wanted to lie in perfect circles, I was about to break the pattern. Confrontations don't always start with shouting. Sometimes they begin in silence, the kind that hums beneath your skin because the truth is finally too heavy to carry quietly. The morning I decided to confront Andrew, the air in our apartment felt wrong. He was in the kitchen, making coffee like every other day, humming to himself. Sunlight poured through the blinds, cutting stripes across the countertop. It was a beautiful morning, cruelly so. I'd rehearsed the scene 100 times in my head, trying to predict how he'd twist it, how quickly he'd switch from guilt to performance. But reality is messier than rehearsals. "Can we talk?" I said, voice steady, almost calm. He looked up from his mug, smiling like nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. "Of course. What's up, babe?" The casual warmth in his tone nearly broke me. Because for a second, I almost believed him again. That's the thing about liars. They don't just manipulate you. They train your body to respond to comfort even when you know it's poisoned. I took the hotel bill from my bag and placed it on the table between us. Flat, centered, like evidence in a courtroom. His smile didn't falter immediately. He glanced at it, then at me, his brow furrowing just enough to look convincingly confused. "What's this?" "Maybe you should read it," I said. He picked it up, eyes scanning the paper, his face an actor's canvas shifting through micro-expressions, confusion, surprise, mild concern, and then the faintest trace of irritation. "Okay," he said slowly. "So? I told you I was in Chicago for work." "Yes," I said, "you did." He hesitated. "And?" I nodded toward the paper. "You might want to check who else was listed on the reservation." The pause that followed wasn't long. Maybe 2 seconds, but it was enough. He blinked once, twice, and then tried to recover. "That's ridiculous. It's a billing error. They must have accidentally written her name? Twice? Signed it under yours?" My voice stayed soft, dangerously soft. He laughed, but it cracked halfway through. "God, you're really reaching. You're letting your jealousy get the best of you again." Again, That word cut through the air like glass. He said it with such practiced pity, the kind that turns accusation into weakness. I met his eyes. I'm not jealous, Andrew. I'm informed. He exhaled sharply, leaning back against the counter. You always do this. Twist things. You create problems where there aren't any. And you create lies where there should have been honesty, I said. His jaw tightened. I don't have to explain every detail of my life to you. Not anymore, I said. You don't. For the first time he seemed startled. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done trying to convince myself you're someone worth marrying. The silence that followed was thick, pulsing, alive. He set the paper down, very slowly, as if careful not to break something fragile. Then his tone shifted, softer, rehearsed again. Look, maybe things got mixed up. Maybe it looks worse than it is. You know how people talk. She's just... An old friend? I said. Yes, I've heard. The smile vanished. You're making a mistake. I tilted my head. Funny, so are you. His hands clenched at his sides. The mask was slipping now. I could see flashes of who he really was. The irritation, the entitlement, the disbelief that I'd stopped playing my role. You're throwing away everything for a misunderstanding, he said, his voice low. No, I said. I'm finally stopping the performance. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he laughed, sharp and humorless. You'll regret this. I already did, I said. He didn't answer. He just stared at me, the way people stare at something that used to belong to them but doesn't anymore. I turned away, heart pounding so hard it hurt. My hands shook as I poured out his untouched coffee into the sink. The smell of it rose with the steam, bitter and familiar. Behind me, he said quietly, So that's it? That's it, I said without turning around. You've had your last lie. He left the kitchen without another word. The sound of the door closing behind him wasn't loud, just final. I stood there for a long time, staring at the wet coffee grounds circling the drain, realizing that this was what endings really looked like. No fireworks, no shouting, just the soft sound of truth settling in. And beneath the ache, a strange calm began to form, the kind that comes when you finally stop asking questions you already know the answers to. The hours after the confrontation felt like a blackout. I couldn't tell whether time was crawling or sprinting. He left the apartment without slamming the door, but his absence carried a noise all its own, the echo of someone who didn't think he'd ever have to leave for real. By evening he was texting, Can we please talk? You're overreacting. I'll come by in the morning. I didn't answer. The quiet between us was finally louder than his excuses. That night I sat on the couch, lights dim, staring at the engagement ring still on my finger. It caught the glow from the street lamp outside, scattering tiny reflections across the room, little eyes of light pretending to be beautiful. I turned it slowly, watching it flicker. For the first time, it looked heavy, not precious. By morning, the texts had turned into knocks, 3 sharp ones, then silence. I opened the door. He stood there with that same expression he always used when trying to charm his way back into the version of himself. He wanted me to see contrite, tired, vulnerable, in just the right measure. Can we talk inside? He asked. I let him in, not because I wanted to hear him, but because I wanted to finish this. He paced the living room like a man rehearsing an apology he didn't believe in. I've had time to think, he said, about what happened, about us. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. And? It wasn't what it looked like. Then tell me what it was, I said. He hesitated, just long enough to confirm everything. We were working on something together. It was late. I shouldn't have let it look suspicious. I almost laughed. A hotel, Andrew. Not a boardroom. A hotel with 2 guests checked in. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration cracking through his calm. Why are you doing this? You think you know everything, but you don't. You're building stories in your head. I cut him off. You mean the kind you've been living in for months? His jaw tightened. I made a mistake. I'm human. Human? I repeated, my voice rising to spite me. Humans forget birthdays, Andrew. They spill coffee. They don't sleep with their old friends while their fiancé is planning a wedding. He stepped closer, tone shifting into that low, measured voice he used whenever he felt cornered. You're angry. I get it. But you're also being dramatic. You've always had this flair for turning small things into catastrophes. Quote, that word, small things, landed like a slap. I realized he didn't see what he'd done as betrayal. He saw it as inconvenience. You know, I said quietly, I used to think you were calm because you were grounded. Turns out you're just empty. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. This is pointless. I came here to fix things, not to get insulted. Fix? I asked. You don't fix a lie. You bury it or you own it. Which are you doing tonight? He stared at me, eyes narrowing. You want honesty? He snapped. Fine. Yes. Something happened. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. The words hit me like a cold wave, not because I didn't expect them, but because of how casually he said them, how easily he reduced betrayal to an afterthought. Not serious, I repeated. You risked our entire life for something that didn't mean anything. He sighed, rubbing his temples, exhausted by the mess he made. Can we stop this now? You're turning it into a show. I laughed, sharp, humorless. A show? You've been performing since the day we met. His composure cracked. You know what? Believe whatever you want, but don't paint yourself as the victim here. You've been distant for months, cold, judging me all the time. There it was, the inevitable twist. When liars run out of lies, they reach for blame. I stared at him, at the man I thought I'd build a future with, and realized he wasn't just guilty. He was convinced he was still the one being wronged. This isn't distance, I said, stepping closer. It's clarity. He blinked, thrown off by the calm in my voice. Then my phone buzzed on the table. One new message. Unknown number. I didn't recognize it until I opened it. A screenshot. A photo of him and her, taken the same night as his conference. His hand on her waist, both of them laughing, careless, happy. Below the photo, just 2 words. You deserve better. His face drained of color as he saw it over my shoulder. Who sent that? He asked, voice hoarse. I looked at him, the irony settling in. Maybe your old friend finally grew a conscience. He reached for my phone, but I pulled it away. You don't get to touch my things anymore. Don't do this, he whispered. Don't ruin everything. I tilted my head, eyes locked on his. You already did. And for the first time since this began, I watched him run out of words. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the refrigerator. He stood frozen, eyes flicking between me and the phone still glowing in my hand. His calm was gone now, the confidence, the smoothness, all stripped away. What remained was the raw, unpolished version of him, the one who never thought I'd see behind the act. I can explain, he said at last, his voice hoarse. It wasn't supposed to go this far. That's the thing about liars, I said quietly. You always think you're controlling the story until it starts writing itself without you. He stepped closer, palms raised like he could talk his way back into safety. Please, just listen. It wasn't love, okay? It was a mistake. I was stupid. I didn't want to hurt you. I laughed, a short, hollow sound. You didn't want to hurt me? Andrew, you looked me in the eye every day and built an entire life on top of that lie. You proposed to me while sleeping with someone else. You didn't accidentally hurt me. You curated it. He flinched, anger flashing beneath the guilt. You're twisting everything. You always do. You love drama more than peace. Peace? I echoed. You mean silence. That's what you wanted. You wanted me quiet, compliant, confused enough to believe every version of you that you invented. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, his voice cracked. I loved you. No, I said softly. You loved how I made you look. There's a difference. Something in him snapped then. Not violent, just desperate. So what now? You're going to destroy everything we've built? Over one mistake? Everything we've built? I repeated. You mean everything I built while you were busy undoing it behind my back? He took another step forward, but I didn't move. I wasn't scared anymore. There was a strange power in standing still while someone else unraveled. Then, as if on cue, the doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the tension like a blade. He froze. I did too. For a second, we just stared at each other, both of us knowing, without words, that whoever was on the other side of that door wasn't random. Don't answer it, he said quickly, voice low, panicked. But I was already walking. The bell rang again, sharper this time. I opened the door before I could talk myself out of it, and there she was. Her, the old friend. She looked nothing like the confident woman who'd smiled through our every coincidental encounter. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale. She was holding her phone like it was evidence, or a weapon. I'm sorry, she said immediately, voice trembling. I didn't know where else to go. Behind me, Andrew muttered a curse under his breath. Don't do this, he hissed. Not here. But she didn't even look at him. She looked at me. I didn't know he was engaged, she said. I swear I didn't. He told me you'd broken up months ago. My throat went dry. And you believed him. She nodded weakly. At first. But then I saw your posts. The ring. The dates that didn't line up. I asked him about it. And her voice cracked. He said it was complicated. That you were unstable. Of course. That word. His favorite defense. I stepped aside, letting her in. You might as well finish this conversation inside, I said. My tone was calm, but my hands trembled. Andrew's face went pale. You're not serious. Oh, I'm very serious, I said. You wanted to juggle stories? Let's have both versions in the same room. She walked past him, standing on the far side of the living room, clutching her phone. I have the messages, she whispered, all of them. He turned on her, voice rising now, all pretense gone. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, she said. I'm done lying for you. The two of them stood there, his anger colliding with her exhaustion, and I realized something strange. I wasn't the broken one anymore. They were. He tried to regain control, turning to me with that pleading look. You're really going to believe her over me? Yes, I said, because at least she's not pretending anymore. His mouth opened, then closed. For once, he had no comeback, no charm left to hide behind. The silence that followed was unbearable for him, but peaceful for me. I turned to her. You should go, I said gently. You don't owe him another minute of your life. She hesitated, then nodded, tears spilling over. I'm sorry, she said again. Don't be, I replied. You didn't betray me. You just helped me see him clearly. Quote, when she left, the door shut softly behind her. No slam, no finality, just quiet closure. Andrew sank onto the couch, face in his hands. You ruined me, he whispered. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. Not rage, not sadness, just relief. No, Andrew, I said. You ruined yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after you. And with that, I walked to the bedroom, packed a single suitcase, and left him sitting there, surrounded by the pieces of the life he'd built out of lies. For the first time in months, the silence didn't scare me. It sounded like freedom. I didn't look back when I left his apartment. I didn't need to. The sound of the suitcase wheels clicking against the pavement was enough of a goodbye. The city air felt colder than I remembered, sharp against my skin, but it carried something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. I checked into a small boutique hotel across town. Nothing fancy. Just clean sheets, silence, and a window that didn't look out on lies. The receptionist smiled at me, unaware she'd just handed me the first key to my new life. I sat on the bed, staring at the blank white walls, feeling the quiet wrap around me, not suffocating this time, but grounding. For hours I did nothing. I didn't cry, didn't scroll through photos, didn't reread the messages I'd collected like proof in a trial that was already over. I just breathed. In. Out. Slowly, like learning again how to exist without waiting for the next betrayal. By evening, the numbness began to fade, replaced by something small and steady. Hunger. I hadn't eaten since the night before. I went down to the lobby cafe and ordered soup. The woman at the counter complimented my engagement ring without noticing the absence of its glow. "It's beautiful," she said. I smiled, polite, and slipped it into my pocket the moment I sat down. The gold felt foreign now, a language I no longer spoke. The next morning, my phone was full of messages. "Andrew, where are you?" "Andrew, you can't just disappear." "Andrew, we can fix this." And finally, one from his mother. "Please don't make this worse for him. You know how much pressure he's under." I almost laughed. Even now, they were protecting him, shielding the man who turned deceit into a hobby. I didn't reply. Deleting them felt better than revenge. Days turned into a rhythm of healing, disguised as routine. Long walks in the cold, morning coffee in unfamiliar places. Nights spent rereading old journals, remembering who I was before we swallowed me. I realized how much of myself I'd given up, trying to be the calm in his chaos, and how little of me he'd ever really seen. Once, I passed the restaurant where I'd seen him with her. The tables were full, the same warm lighting spilling onto the sidewalk. But the sight didn't make my stomach turn this time. It just made me grateful I wasn't sitting there pretending not to notice. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. His voice came through, low and deliberate. "I just wanted to hear you," he said, "to make sure you're okay." "I am," I said. "Better than okay, actually." He went quiet for a beat. "You can't erase everything we had." "I don't need to," I said. "It erased itself." He sighed, something brittle breaking in the sound. "You'll regret this." "I already did," I said softly, and hung up. That was the last time we spoke. Over the next few weeks, I began rebuilding the small things. Cooking dinner for one, buying flowers just because, sleeping diagonally across the bed. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since before him. The words came slowly at first, then easier, like they'd been waiting for me. Healing didn't arrive as some grand revelation. It came quietly, through small acts of self-respect, turning off my phone at night, saying no without explaining, smiling without needing permission. One afternoon, I sat by the window of my hotel room, sunlight spilling across the floor, and finally took the ring from my pocket. I turned it once, twice, letting the light catch it before setting it down on the nightstand. It didn't hurt anymore, it just didn't belong. The next morning, I left it at the front desk with a note. "Forward to Andrew. It never fit." The clerk nodded without question, and that was that. As I stepped outside, the wind lifted my hair, carrying away the last traces of a life I'd outgrown. I walked until the hotel disappeared from view, until the ache in my chest turned into something lighter. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a woman someone had lied to. I felt like a woman who'd finally stopped lying to herself. A month later, I was living in a small apartment on the other side of the city. It wasn't much, just a quiet space with uneven floors, big windows, and a view of the skyline that looked different every morning depending on the light. The kind of place that didn't hold memories yet, and maybe that was the point. I bought second-hand furniture, mismatched and imperfect, but mine. The first night I slept there, I left the curtains open on purpose. I wanted the city lights to keep me company. I wanted to remember that even after everything, the world hadn't stopped turning. Andrew called once more. I didn't answer. The voicemail was short. "I hope you're happy." He didn't sound angry, just empty, the kind of empty that used to belong to me. I deleted it without listening twice. Happiness wasn't his to question anymore. Every day, I started collecting moments that belonged only to me. Early walks by the river with coffee in hand. Reading before bed without checking my phone every 10 minutes. Cooking whatever I wanted. Food too spicy, too indulgent, too me. It took time for my body to unlearn the habit of waiting. Waiting for his messages, his explanations, his apologies. Waiting for the next small disaster, disguised as love. But slowly, the waiting stopped. I filled the space he left with something better. Stillness. I ran into her once. The old friend. It was in a bookstore downtown. I didn't notice her at first, not until I heard my name. She looked different, tired, lighter somehow. We stood there for a second, two people who used to orbit the same lie, now facing each other without it. "I heard you left him," she said quietly. "I did." She nodded, eyes soft. "Good, I did too." For a moment, we just stood there, two women who'd both outgrown the same man. There was no anger between us, no resentment, only the strange relief of survivors recognizing each other. When she left, I realized I didn't hate her. How could I? We'd both believed the same fiction. We just played different roles in it. Back home, I sat by my window, the city flickering beneath me, and thought about the woman I used to be, the one who kept defending him, excusing him, shrinking herself to fit the version of love he offered. I didn't pity her anymore. I thanked her, because without her stubborn hope, I might never have found this clarity. Some nights, I'd catch myself smiling for no reason. Not because life was perfect. It wasn't, but because it was finally honest. No lies humming under my skin. No anxiety disguised as affection. Just peace. The wedding date came and went quietly. No ceremony, no dress, no guests. Just another day on the calendar that didn't belong to me anymore. I spent it alone by the river, the air warm, the water silver under the fading sun. I thought about what that day was supposed to be, and what it had become instead: freedom. Before I left, I took out my phone and deleted the last photo of us. It wasn't an act of spite, just a release, letting the past stay in the past where it belonged. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, turned on the record player I'd found at a flea market, and danced barefoot across my living room. No audience, no performance, just movement, just me. And for the first time, I didn't feel like someone healing from something. I felt whole. It's strange how peace doesn't feel the way you expect. I thought it would arrive like sunlight, warm, blinding, instant. Instead, it came like dawn, slow, quiet, and steady, creeping into the corners of my life without asking permission. Months had passed since I left him, and by then, the hurt had lost its sharpness. It was still there, but distant, like an old scar you only notice when the weather changes. I'd stopped looking for closure from him. Closure wasn't something he could give me. It was something I had to claim for myself. My new apartment had begun to feel like home. Plants thrived on the windowsill. The air smelled like cinnamon and clean laundry. The bed was mine alone now. No side to choose, no space to leave untouched. I filled it with books, pillows, and the occasional late-night thought that no longer scared me. Sometimes, when I passed couples on the street, I wondered if any of them were like we'd been performing happiness for the world, while quietly falling apart in private. I didn't judge them. I just hoped they'd notice the cracks before it was too late. I'd changed, in ways I didn't even recognize at first. I no longer needed constant reassurance. I no longer apologized for wanting honesty. And I'd stopped mistaking control for care. People always talk about forgiveness as if it's the final step in healing. But forgiveness isn't about absolving the person who broke you. It's about deciding you no longer want to carry their weight. One morning, over coffee, I realized I hadn't thought about Andrew in days. That realization didn't make me sad. It made me free. His mother sent one final message months later. "We still think about you. I hope you're doing okay." I smiled at it, not bitterly, just knowingly. She still believed her version of events, where I was the fragile one who couldn't handle her son's imperfections. Let her believe it. I didn't need to rewrite her story anymore. I was too busy living mine. Work picked up again. I started traveling, meeting new people, saying yes to things without the voice in my head asking, "Will he be okay with this?" I realized how small my world had become with him in it. How many corners I dimmed just to make him shine brighter. Now, everything glowed again, uneven and alive. One evening, I met a friend for dinner, someone who'd seen me through the worst of it. As we were leaving, she said, "You look different, lighter." And she was right. I was lighter, not because life had gotten easier, but because I'd finally stopped carrying someone else's lies. On the way home, I walked past a jewelry store. The reflection in the glass caught me off guard. For a second, I saw myself as I was a year ago, the version still trying to prove she was enough. Then the light shifted, and I saw the woman I'd become, steady, whole, untethered. Healing doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't make you forget. It just teaches you to remember differently, without flinching, without bitterness. Andrew will always be a chapter in my story, but not the ending. The ending is me, standing here, finally unafraid of the quiet. Because silence isn't empty when it belongs to you. People always think betrayal ends with rage. It doesn't. It ends with stillness. The kind that comes when you finally stop trying to make sense of someone else's chaos. Months later, I found myself in the same cafe where I'd once run into her. The window seat was empty, sunlight slanting across the table. I ordered my coffee, sat down, and realized I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. I wasn't waiting for anything. Not an apology, not closure, not the next lie dressed as reassurance. The silence around me felt earned. Sometimes I'd wonder when exactly it had all shifted, the moment I stopped asking why and started saying enough. Maybe it was the hotel bill. Maybe it was that last phone call. Or maybe it was every small betrayal that stacked quietly until the truth couldn't be hidden anymore. Whatever it was, it didn't break me. It built something new. I used to think love meant holding on no matter what. Now I know it sometimes means letting go before you disappear inside someone else's story. Love isn't supposed to feel like walking on glass just to keep the peace. It isn't silence or sacrifice or pretending you don't see what's right in front of you. Real love, the kind worth keeping, feels like exhale, like honesty that doesn't tremble, like freedom that doesn't ask permission. The old version of me would have watched from that cafe window, wondering what she could have done differently. The woman I am now just stirs her coffee, takes a sip, and smiles at how far she's come. There will always be people who call you dramatic for naming the truth, who tell you to forgive before you've even finished bleeding. Don't listen. You have the right to leave what hurts you. You have the right to start over without explaining why. One day, you'll wake up and realize you survived the very thing you thought would destroy you, and it won't feel like triumph. It'll feel quiet, whole, yours. So if someone ever makes you question what you already know in your gut, don't wait for proof. Don't wait for them to admit it. Trust the unease. It's your soul trying to save you. I used to think that story was about him. It's not. It's about the moment I chose myself instead. Has this ever happened to you? Share your story in the comments.